G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And if you're looking at getting an E46, because of the way BMW does their model range, there is a hang of a lot of different options to choose from. It kicks off with the 318 with a small little 4-cylinder. The 320 has a 2.2 litre inline 6, the 325 is naturally a 2.5, the 330 has a 3 litre, and then of course you have the M3. But you can get a normal E46 like this for well under 10 grand, whereas if you want an M3, you're going to be talking somewhere north of 30,000. So is it worth it? Today, we're going to find out by comparing my manual M3 with this manual 325 Ci. Seeing these two cars parked next to each other, you can really see how they pumped up the M3 just to make it look that little bit more special. It has a larger bonnet bulge housing the larger 3.2 litre engine. It's got much bigger 19-inch wheels. At the front, it has a completely different bumper design with ducts to feed air onto the larger brakes, and the M3 has completely different mirrors as well, which in theory are more aerodynamic. Around the back, the M3 also has LED taillights, which the very last normal E46 has got, and of course it has the typical M-car quad exhausts. Now, the engines. The 318 has a 2 litre 4-cylinder, which makes around 112 kilowatt. If you bump up to the 320, now we're talking a 2.2 litre inline 6 with 125 kilowatt. This 325 has a 2.5 litre M54 B25. It makes 141 kilowatt and 245 newton meters, and then the 330 pumps out 170 kilowatt and 300 newton meters. And you can have it paired with either a 5-speed manual or a 5-speed automatic. The M3, on the other hand, takes the M54's recipe and turns it into an S54 because it is an M-car engine. It's brought out to 3.2 litres, has 6 individual throttle bodies, much more aggressive camshafts, double Vanos, and a host of other different upgrades to bump the power from 170 kilowatt in the highest performance normal E46 up to 252 kilowatt, and it pumps out 365 newton meters of torque as well. It is one of the highest specific output engines from the era, and these E46 M3s could be paired with either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed SMG. And of course both of them are rear wheel drive, but the M3 has a limited slip diff, whereas most of these normal E46s are open diff. So certainly in the engine department is where the extra money is going. And finally, onto the interior differences. The M3 has some specific M seats, which have the little M logo embossed in the headrest. They're a little bit more aggressively bolstered and they're made of Napa leather, but these seats in the normal E46 have still got a decent amount of bolstering in them, and both of them are electric adjusting with 3 memory seats. They both have pretty much the same steering wheel. The M3 has some 10 and 2 grips here, whereas the normal one doesn't, but they have the same buttons on it. They both have cruise control. The radio center stack is identical. The M3 has a few extra buttons down here, but the rest of the interior is pretty much exactly the same. They both have the same armrest, they have the same handbrake, they have the same shift knob assembly and the same funny window switches here in the middle rather than on the door. So the interior in general is pretty similar. There's just slight differences to the steering wheel, slight differences to the seats, and slight differences to the gauges. Driving the E46 325 Ci. First impressions, the steering is just as slow but feels equally as good. And the engine is actually quite a potent wee unit, I've got to say. Handling is still pretty good, although there's definitely a bit more body roll. And just like with the M3, you can row nicely through the gears, you can heel toe. And while the engine is obviously way quieter, it is still a really sharp drive. And the acceleration, genuinely, that's stellar. Heel toe is really, really good, eh? The engine just responds, honestly, just like it does in my M3. And for a 2.5, if you told me this was a 330, honestly, I would probably believe you because it feels quite potent. It probably helps that these BMWs have quite short gears, like top of second is what? Let's find out. It only gets to 90 odd in second, whereas my M3 will get to more than 100, and the engine is way quieter, like it's a super quiet engine. But it still sounds great, eh? Makes a lovely noise. Heel toe, turn it in. You would think the M3 would be 10 times better, and it's definitely better. The engine is more raucous, the throttle response is better, it's obviously way faster, a lot more powerful, feels a lot more special to drive. But if you want sort of that early 2000s raw, timeless BMW driving experience, one of these will genuinely suffice. It's not a word of a lie, this thing is a lovely car to drive. Driving the E46 M3. Naturally, the big advantage with this car is the engine. But if we put that aside for the meantime, I'm actually quite surprised at how good a normal E46 is. The steering in this and the 325 felt very similar. This does have some 10 and 2 grips here, and it's a slightly fatter, chunkier steering wheel, so that part of it feels quite good, but both racks communicate well but are very, very slow. This does handle a little bit better because it's on 19-inch wheels rather than 16-inch wheels, so there's a lot less tyre flex, and of course it has stiffer suspension, but I feel like if you put some bigger wheels and coilovers in that E46, most normal people wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. A friend of mine, Jack, who tends to be quite harsh on cars, but this one point that he made I would have to agree with. The E46 M3, as good as it is, it feels like a 332 Ci. If you compare the E90 M3 with like an E90 325 or 330i, there's no comparison. The V8 revs 1500 RPM higher, makes way more power, like another 100 kilowatt. The sound is just exotic. It is a much sharper, much more special drive. In the case of the E46, because it's just a better inline six, there's not really anything that necessarily differentiates it apart from the raucous noise. I don't want to be hard on the M3 because it is better, there's no denying that. It's better in every single way, and I mean, just listen to this. Like, the 325 doesn't sound like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the M3 people put on this pedestal, and having now owned one, it is a fantastic car. But if you're talking pure value for money, I genuinely think that a 325 or a 330 Ci in most normal circumstances where you're not trying to set the world's fastest lap records would give you 80% of the drive of this for 20% of the money, which to me is the bargain of the century. So 325 versus M3. Yes, the M3 is better, but the 325 represents fantastic value for money. Either I would recommend, depending on your budget. BMW makes some of the best driver's cars around. Immediate, sharp, no traction control interference, no stupid electronics to get in the way. They make some of the best cars around, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time.